we got a lot of video footage and stuff to get you caught up on with the stimulus checks, everything going on in Congress with the voting rights legislation. This is your stimulus check update. Now, first off, you are one step closer to potentially monthly recurring stimulus checks. Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi swore her into office. She is now member of the House of Representatives and another voice that is pushing for recurring checks. We are hearing that the Senate, they are moving forward with the voting rights legislation, and today we heard from Bernie Sanders and he's saying the Republicans and Trump Manchin and Kristen Sinema are pathetic for not getting on board. What else he had to say? The Sanders said that he is open to supporting primary challengers against the Manchin and Sinema, and he is saying, listen, they are not going to get on board to support the Democratic agenda. Get him out of here, and whoever wants to replace them or support them. Bernie Sanders not holding back. Senate Democrats march forward on their own but drone voting rights bill, and that's it because they don't have the Manchin and the Sinema on board, and they need all Democrats in the Senate or 50 of them to pass it through. And but you guys, we're hearing that even though it's all but drove the Senate majority, like the Chuck Schumer is saying that they are going to do this. Senate majority, like the Chuck Schumer said, and when those central members of this chamber were elected to debate and to vote, when closer to all we are going to vote, especially on the issues is vital to beating hard and our democracy's voting rights. We are not stopping. This is too important. This is scared. There have been 3 federal level checks. We have the 1,200, 614, and 100. Now, the 4th one is something that a lot of people would like to see, but it's currently not being discussed in the Congress very much at this time, and we gotta wait to see what is going to unfold with the pandemic in the economy to see if that gets on their plates. Congress and President are calling for more spending provisions. Now, Republicans are not opposed to it. We are going to be seeing what unfolds here see if the Trump Manchin and Kristen Sinema get on board. But we just had another representative enter into the House that is pushing for more checks after a largely self-financed campaign that promised the universal basic income from the government of the $1,000 a month to this making $75,000 a year or less. Democrat Sally Shear Phyllis McCormick won the special election last week, and she was sworn on today. She said, "Welcome to Marijuana Supply, McCormick. Congratulations on your victory. Now, when you go or come home and will be sworn in as members of the Congressional Black Caucus in the Congress, it's pretty exciting. It's even more exciting that's where you make it take place in the front of the state of the surprise." So there we have it, and congratulations to her. She is the first Haitian American representative in Congress. She will be another voice vocalizing in that American people need monthly recruiting checks during this pandemic. Now, they are going to be talking about voting rights legislation. Bernie Sanders said, tomorrow the Senate is going to be casting an enormously important vote, and that vote has to do whether or not we preserve the foundation's American democracies, or whether we allow Republican governors and legislators all across this country to suppress the vote and impose extreme gerrymandering to attract independent elected officials, all of which the goal is to make it harder for people to vote, people who vote against the Republicans. It is outrage. And tomorrow, we have the opportunity to overturn what these governors and legislators are doing. And one way, this is a very complicated issue, constitutional aspect, but on the other hand, it is pretty simple issue, and that's it tomorrow. Will we vote to allow the majority to roll the 15 votes plus the vice president? Or will we maintain the archaic and undemocratic process of getting 60 votes or pass this bill? That's what tomorrow is about now. Right now, every Republican will be voting against us, and that's pretty pathetic. But what's equally pathetic? As of now, 2 Democrats will be voting against us as well. Those 2 Democrats, Senator Sinema and Senator Manchin, will rethink their position and understand that the foundations of American democracy are at stake. Senator Bernie Sanders thinks there are a good chance Senators Manchin and Sinema will face challenges in the future Democratic primaries and says he will be open to supporting their opponents ask about the likelihood of the mentioned in the Sinema being challenged by other Democrats. Senator indicated that he thinks there are a very good chance of that happening through her observed. It's up to the people of those states. They are elected officials and ask if he could be open to supporting the challenger senators answers that personally, the way the Senate is structured in order for them to pass this through with the process of reconciliation. Any vote that they any bill, that legislation they like to pass, it has to get the majority vote through the reconciliation. And the way the Senate is structured is 50. Democrats 50, Republicans leave the 50-50. So for them to pass it through with the majority vote, they literally need very single senator to vote in favor. And then the tie-breaking vote could go to Vice President Kamala Harris. So if they lose just one vote right now, Democrats to pass through its legislation, they lose the entry thing. And right now, we are hearing there are 2 that are not on board now. Despite that, they are saying they are going to be voting on this and they are going to try to still push this through. Senate Democrats on Wednesday will try to get closer to the floor vote on the 2 voting rights bills that have sat inactive for months in the chamber despite having no response path in the victory on the legislation. Now, the Senate have to cancel the planned receipt this week to debate on the 2 bills and the Freedom to Vote Act and John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act, which are but wanted to fail. Senate Democrats got around the GOP filibuster to start debate on the measure, but under current rules, they could still need the 60 votes to enter the debate to the proceed to vote. Doing so is the dim perspective given that Republicans in unified opposition to them. Now, Democrats hold slim technical majority in the chamber. Each party holds 50, but Vice President Kamala Harris, Democrats could act as the tiebreaker and an event of the voting impasse. And right now, we are hearing the Senate majority leader Chuck Schumer say they are going to speak ahead on this. He said, for the first time, this is really the first time today that Congress has been debating a bill to protect the voting rights on the Senate floor on the Freedom to Vote Act and the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement. And when those and 12 members of this chamber were elected to debate and to vote, when those are 12, we are going to vote, especially on the issues is vital to be beating heart of the democracy is voting rights. Democrats have tried for months to hold the voting rights debate on the floor, but we are being blocked each time by the Republicans. But there's still a lot of work to do. Now, as we debate these measures, the Senate is going to confront the critical question. So members of this chamber do what is necessary to pass these bills and move them to the President's desk. The struggle for voting rights is one of the cycles in America. In the 1917, 89 in the most states, we have to be white male, Protestant, priority owner to vote. That might leave out most of people here. I'm reading the biography of Grant. The white Southerners, the number one thing they wanted to prevent the predecessors from doing is voting above anything else because they knew it was power, and we have to step forward, and then we have to step back. And unfortunately, right now, with the Republican legislators, we are in the midst of what to step back. So, Senate Democrats we are going to fight the fight, and we are under no illusion. We know this is an uphill fight, especially when the virtually very Senate Republican, to their shame, is staunchly against any legislation to protect the right to vote. But when this chamber confronts the questions, this important one to vital to our country, to our democracy with this a long history, or the members here and any others, because this has been such a strong strength in our caucus. Unity in our caucus has worked hard on these bills. The Senate spent an entire year drafting, considering, and debating voting rights legislation. Senate Republicans have to spend the same amount of the time refusing to negotiate with our members, including Senator Manchin, will even debate this legislation. Over the past year, Republican-controlled legislators have worked to pass legislation that could make it harder for Americans to vote following the president's big line, and this is particularly aimed at people of color, at the poor people, at the young people, displaced people, and elderly people, and people who live in the cities. It's not aimed across the board. That's an effort to try this entire election process. If the Senate cannot protect the right to vote, which is cornerstone of our democracy, then the Senate rules must be reformed. If Republicans block the closure on legislation before us, I will put Florida proposal to change the rules to allow for taking filibuster on this legislation as recommended by the number of our colleagues who has been working on this reform for a long time. Historically, changes to Senate rule has been necessary to adapt to changed circumstances. Either Senate bill is traditionally stated that to address voting rights in the timely fashion, there's an opportunity to do exactly that, to change the Senate rule to propose to the public debate. That's a restorative of the Senate's long-standing speech limit. We feel very simple on something as important as voting rights. If the Senate Republicans are going to oppose it, they should not be allowed to sit in their office. They got to come down on the floor and defend their opposition to voting rights and wellspring of our democracy. And there are bold, strong feeling in our caucus about that. Whereas members of minority party have exalted their speaking rights and defended their opposition on the Senate floor, and the debate will have the rounded course, and the Senate will move to vote on the final passage at the majority threshold, which has always been the threshold for the final passage.